name is Gook. I live on Dragon Lake, which is in the Quesnel River Watershed. It's just on the outskirts of Quesnel. I'm a third-generation settler. My grandfather had a farm right on Dragon Lake, which I managed for years. And I still live on an acre and a half of that original farmstead land. Thank you so much for coming. We thought, well, maybe other people, like, people who were at the Save Site C, or Save the Peace River, sorry, Ditch Site C benefit last night and all the other things that were going on around town. That's where I was. We were dancing up a storm. I think it raised about $4,000. There were, the Boone family were down from the Peace River, and there were some of the stalwart farmers and if third-generation farmers in the valley that are holding on big, and they've got a big court case coming up in April that started. There's actually numerous court cases coming up, but on the 20th of April, I'm pretty sure, but they will be up on their website, the Peace Valley Environmental Alliance or Association. And that's happening here in Vancouver, so they're looking for as much support as possible. That is a ridiculous project, as we all know. And I wanted to plug that a little bit right at the beginning because of them providing such a wonderful night last night. We danced like crazy and had a really good time.
Where was that?
It was at the Wise Club. The Balloons played, Art Napoleon, Harold Stave spoke, just an amazing history of the agricultural land reserve and all kinds of issues. Joe Floyd gave a very passionate speech. Grand Chief Stuart Phillips spoke. It was an amazing evening.
How many people?
It was a pretty packed house over the evening. People were coming and going, but I mean, there was probably 250, something like that, I think. Yeah, maybe more. Yeah, but a really great evening. I really loved what Grand Chief Stuart Phillips said when, I guess he was on the Vaughn Palmer show recently, a TV interview, and Vaughn Palmer brought up right away about Site C, and all Stuart Phillips said was, well, I wish them the best of luck. I just thought it was a classic reference to a doomed project. So this is a workshop that we put together about the Mt Polley Imperial Metals. Actually, Mt Polley is no longer there. Okay, it's been mined to smithereens. So it's an Imperial Metals Mining Corporation disaster that happened up on Quesnel Lake. My name is Gook, and this is Will Coop. Will Coop is the amazing researcher and founder of the BC Tapwater Alliance, who's done some amazing research with regards to this issue as well as many other watershed issues in BC. Morning. So to start off, we just thought we'd just do introductions and maybe a few words about why you're here and what the Mt Polley issue has tweaked in you in order. So yeah, Erin.
Yeah, my name is Marianne. I work in Vancouver here in the Mining Justice Alliance group, and also I live part-time in 100 Mile House. I'm, I guess, fourth generation settler on unceded Secwepemc territory, and that's partly why I wanted to be involved in terms of finding some way to share the responsibility for the land.
Hi, I'm Joe Daniels. I'm interested in Mt Polley because I actually work for a Vancouver-based charity called Fraser Riverkeeper, and I started literally with the company 4 days before Mt Polley hit. So it's kind of shaded my entire experience working for this charity, and it's been something I've been kind of following as closely as possible over the past 8 months, and I've been really frustrated with the lack of action, both through the media and also through the NGO community. So I'd really like to try to see if I can get some action directed towards this. So that's why I'm here.
Hi, my name's Dan. I guess I grew up in the Smithers area, so I'm pretty sort of aware of the struggle with the pipeline knowledge and stuff there that's going on as well.
Excuse me, would you please speak more loudly?
the Smithers area, so I'm very sort of well in tune with the LNG and Enbridge pipeline struggles that are going on there, as well as sort of a long history of mining in the area, of which the Huckleberry and Red Chris were quite a bit farther north are large players and sort of, you know, folks in the area. So I'm just here to sort of listen to stories and draw inspiration from what other folks are doing, and just kind of keep in touch with people who are dealing with sort of real environmental crisis right now, what they're doing on the ground right now.
I'm Janine McLeod, and I'm doing a PhD that looks at water and its meanings. I was just devastated to hear about what happened in Mount Polley, and when I think about it, I get really emotional. So yeah, so I decided to come today to find out more about what's happening around, organizing around the response to that. I actually, would love it if we could really make more of a big plus. That would be really great.
My name is Georgia. I'm a student at UBC in the First Nation Studies program, and I take a lot of kind of environmental history-based courses as well, and I'm here today to learn.
I'm from Vancouver Island. I'm Shimama. I'm fighting a contaminated soil site coming to my neighborhood. And I've been following Mount Polley since it happened. And the first thing I started doing was making oyster mushroom burritos. And even though I couldn't get up to Mount Polley, I started sharing the oyster mushroom burritos with everybody because these suckers actually can eat arsenic and lead and bioremediate the planet. So I brought a bunch with me if anybody feels like getting one, and I will take donations because I need to get back to Vancouver Island again. But these are the most amazing thing, and I've been talking with Layla and a bunch of other people, and I really want to organize a bioremediation trip up to Mount Polley and start doing what I learned in permaculture course.
Yeah.
Bravo. We didn't get that guy and that guy.
Yeah, we'll come back to them, but
My name is Owen. I do video for important causes such as this, but my main focus is I run an organization called Real Hearings, and I build public transparency engagement tools. So I built Real Port Hearings, which funneled basically public comments that were supposed to go to the Port Authority through us, which we published. And the new version of the tool has, when you send a comment in, it automatically contacts based on your address information, your MLA, your MP, and your mayor. So I'm basically, I want to talk to everybody about building these kind of public engagement tools, and my overall goal is to unite all these pieces into a record, which goes to all the politicians, so we'll be able to say, hey, you've received 180 letters about this, and they'll all be there. And they're no longer going to be able to hide. So this is my goal. So anybody who wants to come talk to me about that, that's what I'm doing.
very interesting. At the end, do you want a few people who are interested in that?
Yeah, sure. Come talk to me. I'm basically here all weekend. And,
Fantastic.
yeah.
So say your name again, please.
My name's Owen. It's a crazy spelling. It's EOGHAN. But the website is realhearings.org. And I got lots of cards, but it's we're gonna bury these guys. So it's
The revolution is full.
Hi, I'm Becky Johnston, and I'm just here to learn, basically. I come from Vancouver Island, from Nanaimo, and I watched the Mount Polley disaster on TV on the internet, just appalled. So in a way that maybe I can participate in some sort of action.
I'm Doug Johnston. I'm Becky's husband. We're interested in most things environmental. We have 4 children, and we're very concerned for the future. Our focus has been primarily climate, but this is a factor in all of our lives and our children's future, and we want to do or play a part in change. And that's what we're doing.
My name is Fred Bass. I'm a preventive medicine physician who is moving. I spent a career in tobacco. I'm moving more into the more urgent problem, which is saving our ecosystems and seeing what I can contribute. I just want to say one thing. what we represent in this room is the interests of a large proportion of most of human population, if not all of it, and many other species. And we are an endangered species. That is, activists are an endangered species. And it's very important to speak from your heart and to speak loudly. So put your shoulders back and let your heart sing. This guy is very good at that. Just think of yourself as being invaded by his energy, and then let it rip. But it's very important that our little segment of the population pipe up very clearly, slowly, and forcefully. So put your shoulders back and sing.
Hey, if I could just add to that, I've just got to say, I've observed you on a few occasions in a number of different projects and things, and I have to say you are a very positive cat, and you put out a very positive vibe. It's really good energy for this whole cause. Thank
you. My name is Herb Mercado. I'm from Williams Lake. I participated in the federal hearings twice for prosperity mines. Maybe I should say against prosperity mines. They were planning to build a tailings dam over 40 stories high at Fish Lake. They're going to destroy the lake. And also I experienced the tailings failure. I didn't experience it directly, but you know, it's in my living area. And I guess I'm really concerned about what's happening. And as far as I know, one of the main factors in the collapse of the tailings dam at Mt Polley is the glacial fill. Is it the glacial fill?
Yeah.
That the mine was built, the dam was built on, and apparently they're going to rebuild that thing on that same glacial fill. It's unbelievable. So that's why.
I'm Jane Brett. I'm from Victoria, across the big water.
Hi.
And I'm part of Mining Justice Action Committee in Victoria. We've been around we started our 4th year. We're educating ourselves, getting to know people. We met Jacinda Mack. She came over and told us her side of what happened. And I've been involved with Friends of Namaya Valley for a long time, so this area is of interest. And I think the thing that really moved me about this was the tsunami in Japan, which we all watched when we saw that wave of water coming just unstoppably across the land. And when I saw the Mt Polley footage, I don't know how I happened to see it on my tablet almost just a few hours after when they first got that film out. And it felt like it was, you know, in real time. And I just thought, no. I just remember screaming inside because I watched it like I did about the tsunami in Japan. So that's why I'm here.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Glanbeck, and I was born in East River, Alberta. And I've lived in Tofino in Quebec territory for 27 years now. And I work with a group called Blackwood Action. I just want to acknowledge a couple people have mentioned just that grief of what happened, and I just want to encourage people to not shut that down and find whatever venue you can to express that, because I think by allowing that out, you know, that allows our life energy and our love for the planet to come through and keep us active and keep us sustainable. We brought a few reports with us. They're just down here. There's an article in here about a trip we did up to Mt Polley about a month after the disaster happened. You're welcome to grab those. And one thing Kamloops Manual mentioned yesterday is the name of this area in Chouetnik, which I can't pronounce, but just the idea that it's the name represents the birthing water, so it's the Quesnel Lake going downstream. And I just, I'm going to ask Dan to pronounce it because I really believe in the power of these indigenous place names. It's the resonance of land. And so we're referring to it as Mount Polley, as Doug pointed out. Mount Polley's actually not there anymore. But yeah, so I'm going to ask Dan to pronounce it because I can't, just to bring that energy into the room. But, yeah.
You actually can pronounce it. We all can. The name of the area that we learned from Canada. Sorry, my name is Dan Lewis. I live in Tofino on unceded Tlahuac territory. I'm also with Clackwood Action, and I was seriously messed up when that thing happened because the same company has the same plans for Clackwood Sound. So we were felt called to come to the Sacred Fire. So the name of the place is Yuh-na-sen Hemetwa. So it's Yuh-na-sen Hemetwa. Yuh-na-sen Hemetwa. Yuh-na-sen Hemetwa. I left a lot of tears in that Sacred Fire. I spent one night tending the Sacred Fire with an elder from Shwetmek. And that night I remember just looking into the fire and right down into the heart and the coals, and that's kind of like a dangerous place, like you wouldn't really want to put your hand in there, but for me it became a really safe place, and it's now my little safe place I go when I feel overwhelmed, is I go into the heart of that sacred fire, and it holds me, and it's very healing, and it's a very safe place for me now. And I just really want to acknowledge what Bonnie said, that we should be feeling a lot of grief about this, and the response, I haven't seen the response yet from the major NGOs. There's comments in the media, and it's really not clear, I think, maybe because of the way the environment movement is structured in BC, that we've always been fighting for wilderness areas. But anyways, so what are we going to do about this? Because we have not yet generated sufficient political power to make any changes yet. With this thing in the air, there should be serious change come down. And
Before we get introductions from other people that came in the room, I just want to say Dan and Bonnie have been massive inspiration for me over the years, and their presentation yesterday morning about Mount Polley, as well as the mining, Imperial Metals projects they're facing in Clackwood Sound, was very inspiring also. And clackwoodAction.org, right? Really great group to support. So we're back over here. Angelique.
I'll come visit you.
We're just doing introduction.
Muchos días. No, pues yo llegando estoy y yo quería estar en la sala para escuchar un poco, pero no ha venido mi traductora.
I'm just arriving, so
Con mucho gusto.
but my translator's not here. Well, looks like I am. So I'm very happy to be here.
Solamente.
That's it for now.
Solo traigo energías para todo.
Just bring good energy for everybody.
We're just doing introductions.
Okay, my name is Ricardo Segovia. I work with a nonprofit called E-Tech International. We're basically a motley crew of engineers and scientists with a conscience. We're trying to always be in that gap, technology gap, where communities don't get honest information. So right now we're working in Ecuador and Peru, in Ecuador on mining issues on a project that's actually being put together by the same contractors working on this Polley dam. And the design is basically exactly the same. And it's also in the middle of one of the most ecologically diverse places of the entire planet. So it's scary, really. It's the same size, the same similar foundation. It's ridiculous. So anyway, I studied engineering, but really in my heart I'm a lover of the land, and I think it's shameful that more engineers aren't stepping up and saying this is nonsense. This is, even just from your professional point of view, this is bullshit. And so I think why I want to get involved with the Polley issues, because I'm from El Salvador, so I always felt that need to go back to where I'm from, even though I've been here most of my life and work in South America. But also I've been a part of BC for 27 years, and I feel like sometimes you got to work closer to home. And so this disaster really hit me hard. Just seeing the videos, seeing the destruction is really intense. And it's sad when I talk to some of the guys I went to school with, and their attitude is, oh shit, you know, this is gonna look really bad for Imperial, or oh shit, how's BGC gonna recover? How's Piso gonna recover? How's the river gonna recover? And it's nonsense, and I'm ashamed to be an engineer, but I have to use the knowledge that I've learned to do something better.
Thank you.
I'm Michelle, and like Fred said, I'm interested in maintaining ecosystems and other species. I'm against industrial civilization. I don't think we need any new mines in this province, and I'm going to learn.
Yeah, and my name is Ira Zbarsky. I guess my inheritance is Ukrainian, Canadian. I work in Central America and the Philippines, and my home base is in Caribou, just entering Caribou in Clinton. We have a little base there. We run projects in self-reliant energy and food self-reliance. And I work with indigenous peoples in Guatemala and Chiapas. I'm presently working with a number of Kekchi movements for regional autonomy, territorial autonomy. And my home base in Guatemala is in Kakchikel territory, and I'm part of a movement to reclaim the Kakchikel nation. And my work with these people, aside from our experiments and economic alternatives, is building indigenous solidarity. And I have available statements from the new Maya Kakchikel Nation and from the Federation of Kekchi organizations of Alta and Baja Verapaz in support of the struggles of the First Nations against Kinder Morgan, and a letter of representation to the Shuswap people to build a relation of solidarity and international trade. And I'm from the Shuswap territory.
The best stopover point in Clinton. Your Ann Shones, our wonderful hosts. Really great model if you're traveling through the wonderful town of Clinton. We were just doing introductions.
Yeah, so my name's Julian. I'm from a place called Peterborough, Ontario. So Mississauga, Anishinaabe territory. And I'm pretty new to BC, but I'm a law student at UBC. And yeah, I've done some work in the fossil fuel divestment campaign back at Trent University, and as well as some pipeline resistance, and really just looking on finding ways to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again, because every time it just seems like the response is really lackluster. Yeah, so looking forward to just doing introductions.
Oh yeah, morning. My name is Cesar Porras. I'm originally from Chihuahua, Mexico. I live here, and I work with the Mining Justice Alliance and other groups in the Mexican community for education.
Great tour yesterday, by the way. Great tour yesterday.
And we have a, did you notice that, the sky just opened?
Yeah,
the
I
tour
know.
so we have.
Great, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Should I do a little blast? We were each going to do like 20 minutes, something like that. And how's that? If somebody keeps it.
9:35.
Maybe 9:35. That'll still give us a bit of time.
Yeah, that takes
That's
us to
15.
That takes us to 10:15.
Oh.
No, 10:05, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay, well, we got to punch this.
20.
Okay. Yeah, massively want to recognize and honor being on Coast Salish territory. And I want to mention all the other nations and defenders within the Quesnel River Watershed also. I live in Carrier territory, which is also very involved in the Quesnel River issue. Yeah. As a third generation settler, organic farm, we have a small land co-op halfway between Quesnel and Williams Lake on the west side of the river, as well as I live on an acre and a half of my grandfather's original farm right on the shores of Dragon Lake. And I've been involved in all kinds of issues over the years, Eco-Forestry being my main focus. We had a horse logging co-op that did natural selection forestry for 18 years in the Quesnel area. There's still activity on those fronts going on, and I've worked with many community groups throughout BC, First Nations, as well as other places in Canada for getting more natural selection forestry, alternative forestry. I really wanted to just say a few words about the Quesnel River Watershed and Quesnel Lake, the area where this desecration happened. For many years we worked on conservation issues there, on alternative forestry issues there. Forestry seemed to be the major landscape level threat that was, and still is, and quite frankly, it's the worst I've ever seen in British Columbia right now. Since BC Day this year, since August 4th, it's been a bit of a diversion for me in some respects. But when this mine was first proposed, our group, Forest Protection Allies, we wrote letters with major concerns with regards to the Mt Polley mine. One of the things we cited was the fact this ridiculous Tailings Storage Facility perched high above Quesnel Lake and the Quesnel River Watershed, which is one of the richest watersheds in BC. A quarter of the Fraser River salmon is nurtured in this watershed. It's a very unique place in many respects. The lake, we don't have a picture of it here, unfortunately, but it's very long lake, 75 to 80 miles long. It's got a north arm that pops right up fairly close to the Bower Lakes Provincial Park. And we worked on protection area issues between Wellsgrave Park and Bower Lake Park. We wanted to include the whole junction, this area between the north arm and the east arm. And in that area, it's an interior cedar hemlock forest. It's the coldest cedar hemlock forest. It's very kind of similar to coastal cedar hemlock forest, but most of the moisture comes down as snow, so it has a whole variety of other characteristics, including the fact that most of the cedar hemlock are hollow, and because of that, there's these incredible ecosystems that are developed there for bears and grizzly and all kinds of other communities. And salmon are the absolute feeders of that system. So it's the salmon in many respects that has been the key focus of my concern about what's going on here with the Imperial Metals mine disaster. This was an NDP mine. It was a real major pushed project by our local NDP and MLAs at the time, and when the mine started, it was very difficult to raise any opposition really to it. But there was some, and like many other projects we see, it was majorly ignored. The 8 months since this happened, BC Day, it has been a real nightmare for many, many people, obviously. And I was massively impacted and crushed by what happened. We have seen some of the footage we had up earlier, and I'm sure most of us have seen. Has anybody not seen the the footage of the, sort of day after, within the day after stuff? I think we all have seen that, and the impacts of that are phenomenal. But a big thing a lot of people haven't gotten and hasn't come out since is that the breach, that burst, continued to flow for months. And all of the liquid that's saturated in this massive tailings pond continued to flow until the Imperial Metals built an interior dam, which took quite a long while. They had to build it inside the actual tailings storage facility in order to leave the actual breach zone free and able to be investigated by the different investigations that are going on. One of the things that doesn't get much coverage is the fact that there was actually a spillover of the dam earlier in May of the same year, 2014. This dam is maxed out. This company on their website talks of 7, 8 more years of full speed mining. But they have moved into the underground portions of the mining operations, and a few sort of mining experts that I've talked to and engineers I've talked to, once they're into that stage, it's pretty much down to the nitty-gritty in terms of the last bits. So some people have suggested to me that it's only got another year or two left. And that's probably why we never saw a whole lot of effort to really do what was necessary to boost the dam and contain more, and to be able to contain more. The 3 months, the quarter before the dam burst happened, was Imperial Metals, the Mount Polley project's best work. Massive amounts of gold were taken out, silver and copper. Even though it's touted as a copper mine, it's gold. They were into a really major seam of gold in their underground portion of the operation. And I think it was somewhere between $35 to $40 million quarter profit, 3-month profit prior to this burst. I want to suggest that, and there was efforts to draw down the tailings pond prior to this happening, which were actually turned down in order to continue to use the tailings storage facility. So I don't want to say pond anymore because the technical term is actually tailings storage facility. These are facilities that are supposed to contain these toxins forever. And we do not have the regulations and the infrastructure within our system to demand that or have any possibility of that under the current dynamic. So the whole concept is ludicrous, really. But the ongoing use in the media of tailings pond is very, very suspect in my mind of having envisions, as Dan and Bonnie pointed out, bulrushes and butterflies.
Something I found disturbing too when I was looking at some of the images of the Hazelton Creek, what used to be Hazelton Creek, the document referred to it as blood, as if it was an actual occurrence.
Yeah, you got 8 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. The other thing that I want to point out, since this has happened, not 1 teaspoon of these toxic tailings have actually been reprocessed and relocated in the tailings storage facility. Not 1 teaspoon. So whenever there's a suggestion that you see in the media of cleanup, this has not happened. Nothing has happened that way. So besides the fact that it continued to flow out of the actual tailings storage facility for months after, the other major concern in my mind that hasn't been dealt with at all and actually pushes the case for charges against the Ministry of Environment and our own provincial officials, as well as federal officials for that matter, is the fact when the dam burst, a huge amount of tailings flushed into Polley Lake, which was a pristine lake right along the one edge of the mine site. That stopped its exit flow into Hazeltine Creek and down into Quesnel Lake. As well, there was a massive flush of tailings liquid, and it raised Polley Lake a couple meters. And there was a concern that this massive, huge tailings, now dam of Polley Lake, potentially could have burst. But really, when you looked at it, the likelihood of that was incredibly minimal. But something had to be done, and they used it as an excuse. Or they used it, anyway, they had 4 options in terms of what they could have done with this overflow of Polley Lake. They set up an array of diesel-powered massive pumps, and the option they chose was to pump around this plug of Polley Lake and put it into Hazeltine Creek and in the process of that, continued to flush more and more of these toxins down Hazeltine Creek and all of what was deposited down near the estuary or where Hazeltine Creek has now become this massive fan at the edge of Quesnel Lake, and to push, basically, continue to push more of these tailings deeper and deeper down into Quesnel Lake. At this spot, it's about 400 feet. Quesnel Lake is the 6th deepest lake in the world. It's the deepest fjord lake, glacier-fed lake that we know of on the planet. It's an amazing freshwater body. Our government approved a plan that continued to flush deleterious substances into fish-bearing creeks, lakes, and rivers. And these, of the minimal laws that we have in this country, that still is something, means something, hopefully. And if there's any possibilities of prosecution, that will be a key focal point for holding our provincial government and federal government, fisheries and oceans to account. And that went on for a long time, and still, plans for it will potentially continue this spring as the freshet of Polley Lake has to be dealt with. They are building a channel from Polley Lake to try to reestablish a outflow of Polley Lake. But their option, they did have the option of putting it over, back into the mine site and to put it into Springer Pit, which is the huge mine pit that they've been working on for years and is pretty much finished. That, to me, seemed to be the most logical and safest and best option in terms of containing this toxic materials. And it's not the choice they chose, mainly because Imperial Metals has put in a proposal already. I'm going back to a meeting on April 1st in Likely, where they're going to be presenting it to the community to go through a 1-month consultation period and to reopen. They think they'll have approvals to restart the mine by June of this year. And using Springer Pit as the tailings pond for this final leg of their operations, which will probably, as some of these other experts suggest, will get them into this rich vein of gold. 4 minutes ago. So these are the kinds of things that we're dealing with, and there's been a whole bunch of other questions that haven't been answered. Besides the 1/4 of the tailings storage facility content in terms of toxic materials and the liquids that burst, that exited from the tailings storage facility, there was a massive volume of scour, of natural earth and debris, trees, shrubbery, everything that flushed down Hazeltine Creek. Hazeltine Creek's about a 10-kilometer long creek. It's big territory that way. Hazeltine Creek was a creek you could walk across. And now it's in the steepest part of the canyon, it's scoured right down basically to bedrock. So there's huge volumes of all of this very fine silt materials, soil materials that were flushed also down onto the estuary fan, or the fan of tailings, and into Quesnel Lake. Quesnel Lake, a couple minutes still? 3 minutes. 3 minutes, 9. Quesnel Lake goes through a thermocline process in terms of its mixing. The west arm, this is just in the west arm, and the west arm is the exit of Quesnel Lake through at likely where the Quesnel River starts. And when the lake temperatures in the fall evened out, there's a dynamic where when the upper levels of the lake are warmer, that tends to keep the turbidity low in the lake. The silts and things that will cause turbidity low in the lake. So as the sockeye run this fall came up the Fraser River and up into Quesnel and the Horsefly and the different systems that head off of the Quesnel Lake, they were greeted with a much to green-gray turbid stew, as I call it, which has actually entered even the north arm and down further even into the east arm, past the junction of Quesnel Lake, which is just unbelievable that there's that much volume in the lake that is proceeding like that. When this spill happened, the volumes that flushed into Quesnel Lake raised the whole lake 7 centimeters. And so this number that we're trying to get in terms of how much scour is pretty easy. You just have to basically
do the math.
Do the math. Quesnel River this fall for a good portion, 2.5 months, wasn't the clear river that it usually is. It was this gray green turbid stew. Very, very fine particulates were filtering into the sands in all of those areas. So that's the dynamic. I want to pass things on to Will right now, but I have, if anybody hasn't seen the article in the Common Ground, that was a very early article, but they're available. I have some sign-up sheets for a few ideas that we're working on in terms of how we can deal with it. One is we want to pull together more of a legal team that will really help some of the different cases that are proceeding and be involved at that level, as well as a alternative economic strategy for the area through a restoration currency to really help out the businesses that have been impacted there, as well as getting on with the cleanup and the different things that we need to do as a community that takes its role in this. As well, I personally feel that 5 ministers, 5 MLAs in our provincial government need to resign with regards to this, and a few of us are working on a plan to push, articulate, and pursue that objective. So those are the 3 little actions that I'd like to push, as well as a major wild salmon caravan that is being planned with a whole variety of network of organizations throughout BC. It was inspired by Alexander Morton's caravan down Vancouver Island of a couple of years ago.
Wild salmon migration.
Yeah, wild salmon migration. This is planned to be an annual event that highlights the returning smolts, the returning fish from the nurseries down to the ocean. And that's happening in mid-May, so I've got information with regards to that too. So thanks very much.
I don't know if you need to turn the switch. If people can read it, it's fine. If not, it's the last switch on the wall over there.
Okay.
My name is Will Coop. We're kind of flat short for time, so I worked on this thing last night, which means I missed some of the great sessions last night. But So I'm going to try to go through this quickly and boil it all down. That's me up there at the site on September 16th. I was on a tour up in there, and this is the report that we wrote. And this is a segment of our in our report that we'll get into. And this is the chairman in the past. This is what he said, and that was in a Price Waterhouse document. And this is one of the largest mining disasters by volume in world history recorded. There are others that are not recorded. We don't exactly know, but this is a really is a big one. And as Glenda Ferris, who lives near Smithers, just south of Houston, and who was involved in an Equity Silver mine there, said that the most significant thing about what happened here when it happened was that it was videotaped by the regional district, and that caught the world's attention on this. So my background I've been at these kind of issues for about 27, 28 years. I was with a medical group called Project North with First Nations issues, and for about 8 or 9 years I was doing research and advocacy and campaigning for the reprotection of the Greater Vancouver watersheds, where we get our drinking water from here. And I was the co-founder of the BC Tap Water Alliance, and that's been going on since 1997. And been doing lots of research, over 50 reports, etc., all kinds of issues. And in 2006 I wrote a book. And in 2006, from late 2005 to 2006, I did about 5 months of research on big oil. And I wrote a presentation, a submission to the National Energy Board, which is on our website. And in there is about 80 or 90 page chronology of big oil, timeline. And that was a big opener for me, because that's when I realized who was running our government.
Okay.
And same thing for the United States. So in February 2010, I started a website called Stop Fracking British Columbia.
Woo!
This is one of the recent things that we just did. I'm just letting you know. We did an examination of the Council of Canadian Academies that did a national report on fracking, and we did an investigation through another website in the United States and found the Canadian Academies research wanting. So they really haven't presented the public on the ecological harms associated with fracking. There's lots of studies that do show it. But this kind of revolves around the theme of Mount Polley in a way. So when I started to do this report, I didn't have any prior experience or research in doing mining issues, but I picked it up pretty fast. So in September, on my holidays, I went to the Watershed Public Library in the Swift First Nation, spent many hours just photographing documents and then digitizing all that information and making the word searchable. And went for a tour of the Mount Polley mine site. We did 4 media releases. Came out after 9 weeks of writing a report, because I've got a full-time job, so this is all on the side. Weekends, 5 o'clock in the morning, wake up, come home from work, continue doing this stuff. And then we submitted our report to the government's technical panel. And later on in January, we got media coverage on this in the Vancouver Sun and the Victoria Times Colonist. And what I did here is this is from a risk assessment conference. This is an image from this. And what I did is I just put all the information in an image that just had blocks of wood. And the scene of the crime is something that occurred to me when I was doing a documentary. While I was up in September, I was doing a documentary, starting a documentary on Glenda Ferris's history, experiences with the Equity Silver Mine. So there I thought of this title. And so we lay out the history from all the documents, the synthesis of the information that I gathered at the time before a lot of the documents became public. So our report came out 2 months ahead of time before the government's panel report did. And I think we really laid out a really good case of the mysteries behind it all. So in one of the media releases that we had, we suggested them putting a perimeter fence around the whole contaminated site, prevent animals and humans from coming in. These are contaminated soils.
Yeah.
There are people walking around. In fact, when the flood happened through here, the disaster happened through here, there was a fine mist that came out of the air. People were very sick, felt very sick around the area, right? So you've got all this fine mist of all these chemicals and everything else that were generated in the atmosphere. But anyways, all of these soils are in here. They have actually trucked. So they've created a few little pools here to get some of the effluent that's actually going into Quesnel Lake. So they've taken a few truckloads and put it back up into here. But that's the only work that's done to kind of like remove the area of contamination here. So what we suggested here, that they put a berm across this whole area so that none of the contaminated waters get into Quesnel Lake. And we also suggest there's a tributary that comes into here, that this tributary, this old marriage with Hazeltine Creek, that a new flow happens into Quesnel Lake so that that would reduce the amount of water flow going into the area as well. So this is the place, these are the places where you can get the information. You can go to the Government Ministry of Environment's website and get documents and records there. Then you have the panel report. There's about 750 documents just recently released because of the panel investigation. I'm about to do another synthesis of all that information, condense it into an updated, revised report. And as a result of the Mt Polley incident, now the government has asked all the companies to, well, they always had to be required to do this, but they've now got a website where all of the dams in British Columbia have had inspection reports and inundation studies. There's about half of those that have the inundation studies on there. So the panel, when it came out with its report, it said that it found no evidence of failure for human intervention.
Oh my God.
All right, so in this area here, they said that the reason that this happened was because of the foundation material. So the question is this really true? So one of the things that they picked on here, of course it's true, this is a picture I took on the site, is that this slope where the perimeter dam is right here, and the failure is just behind me, was at a slope of 1 to 3 to 1. All right, so the panel acknowledges it in the report, and this is in a as-built report by AMEC, which shows this thing. And I guessed at this slope here in my report because I didn't have these documents at that time. And so what they're saying is that this slope wasn't out far enough. And back in 1995, when Knight Piesel did their report, they suggested that they had a 2 to 1 slope, so it come out a lot farther. This is in their conceptual design. So, but the thing is, what happened here was the company cheaping out, right? This design already was a cheap design, so they went cheap on the cheap, you know what I mean? So, because of the type of dam that was being built, Knight Piesel, the engineer of record, said that just before they left, and AMEC came on, the new engineer of record, is that Mt Polley was having problems with their dam. So Doug mentioned something about the history. I put all this stuff together in a chart to show, you know, what the production rate was, copper, gold, and silver, how much ore was milled, you know, how high was the dam as they were going through each year. So all that information's in our report. Oops. So in the panel mentioned something interesting. And they talked about all these beaches, these tailing beaches. And so they stated in there, because remember they were focusing on what they said was the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But throughout the report they mentioned these problems here. And this has to do with how high the water is in what's called the supernatant pond, where the water collects on top of the tailings, because this is all the precipitation from snow and rain that collects, and all the water that's collected in the water balance issue from the mine gets pumped and stored into the tailings storage facility. And so there has to be a distance between where the water is and where the crest of the dam is. And so what the panel was saying is, we've got some problems here. So this is a 1995 report by Knight Piesel. So this is the top of the dam. This is supposed to be, we don't know what this distance is from here to here. That's supposed to be where the water is, so that the water, this is the water table, so it gets pumped through here and then collected to the drains, to the toe of the outside of the dam. But when the water gets too close, you see what starts happening. You get your area where the dam is, the materials start to get super saturated.
Yeah.
So they knew about this stuff a long time ago. So what Knight Piesel did when they started this dam is there's 3 types of dams that engineers construct tailings dams with. So this is an upstream type, a center line, and a downstream. And so what this dam is, it's a combination of these two. So on the perimeter, and there's 3 sides of the dam. There's the perimeter, the main, and the south embankments. And so on the perimeter side, we have this structure right here, which forms a really small base, but the rest of it is this design right here. And so this is Knight Piesel in 1994 in a conference in Australia promoting this type of structure. But there's some real big problems with this kind of issue. So here's the perimeter bank where the failure happened. It's all this kind of upstream structure right here. There's nothing really supporting it, and also it's built at too steep of an angle. So in the United States, Steve and Vic wrote this report in 1983 criticizing this type of design. Right? It was revised in 1980. He was on the panel.
What?
Wow.
Right? That's why they chose him. He's very well recognized throughout the world. And in our report, we also quoted 1994. This is the United States EPA who rely on fixed information, but they also say that they also warned about this type of dam structure, right? So Knight Piesel knew about these documents. It wasn't in their reference section in their reports. Our government technocrats knew about this stuff, right? It was still going ahead because they were taking the cheap version. So people call this type of structure, this upstream structure, as an unforgiving structure because it's not meant to hold water. So Knight Piesel, in their conception, see, here you see the supernatant pond, the word that Doug likes so much. And it's well away. So this is the beach, this is where, so the mine comes down, the tailings come down here in spigots, and so all this stuff gets pumped out of a pipe and it gets deposited here. It has to be done so that the water that's being collected here stays well away from the edge of the dam. So that's their concept. But in reality, right, we have this going on right to the edge. There's the perimeter, there's the main, and there's the south perimeter embankments. So, but these things, as we came out and looked in our report, we started to research this stuff from different Google images. You can see over time what's going on here, right? So, so as I say here, is that the Mt Polley Mining Corporation failed to adhere to the proper maintenance of the beach width between the supernatant pond and the crest of the Tailings Storage Facility's 3 embankment crests. And this is what I call a chronic problem. And the government knew about this stuff and reported on it, and so did their consultants.
I don't see what's going on here. Can you explain it a little more, the pictures?
Well, you see, there's, in this other thing here I was trying to tell you, you're supposed to keep this away, you're supposed to keep this water away from the outside of the dam. Well, that's not what's happening here. So the water rises, comes and saturates the outside.
We got 4 to 5 minutes.
So in it also, there's these instruments that are placed throughout the dam when they built it to watch the way in which water flows through the structure. So when we did our analysis, looked at all the documents, the ones that were available to us, we found a lot of these instruments were not functioning, and they were mentioned in the report. And so what did Knight Piésold say in their last document? No additional raises of your facility until this lost instrumentation is replaced. That never happened. So, because of what happened to the Mt Polley Dam, so what happened first, this area of the dam broke here. And I don't have very much time to get into all this stuff here, but so as a result, all the forces came this way first. And it eroded this side, and then next, this part started to come down. And so this is an overhead look of what happened with the drainage. So what happens is that as it comes in like this, the tension pulls on the sides of this structure, and it starts to collapse inward. If you understand me,
Yeah.
this is the physical force of this. This is the company they hired. This is a confidential document with this photo in here. This is a tension crack along here as a result of this, all right?
Whoa.
And that's about 150 meters it goes on like that. So I did this just to show the, the kind of artwork structure of how this stuff imploded. And this is where they built their new berm and everything else. So what we're concerned about is we don't think that this impoundment has any more integrity. As a result of this whole thing, shook up the mining world, really, especially in Canada here, and the government launched the appearance of accountability. So said, listen, we know that you're giving us these documents, we just want you to do it faster. And so there's a place now where you can get all this information that's collected in one spot. This has never happened before. So you can get to look at this stuff and learn about this. So, but way back when Knight Piésold was advocating this modified center line, they mentioned that there were other mines that had this as well. And so these are the ones that they've identified in this whole list where they have the similar type. And the big one here is self-commenced. This dam here is a looming liability.
Oh, good God.
And this is out of sight, out of mind. It's a very isolated part. This is northwest of Mackenzie.
Oh.
So I had to race through all this stuff. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Is this available, is this presentation in your report that's available on the web?
This presentation?
Yep.
I just put this together last night.
His report is available.
Will it become available to us?
Sure. Yeah, it's rudimentary. It's really rough, but I can put the stuff out. Yeah. I mean, all the stuff is from my report. Right. So
it's from your report. So
yeah.
all of this is in your report.
Maybe some of the last things are not yet. We're going to be doing some added stuff.
Okay. How can we access this report?
The BC Top Alliance website.
Okay.
Just Google BC Top Alliance or www.bctwa.org.
I just wondered, Doug, if you can say a little bit about what's happening with local organizing in the Likely area or Quesnel area, and also just how people can work in solidarity with what's happening there as well.
Imperial Metals has regular meetings in Likely. I think I've gone to like 10 of them. They have had one information meeting or 2 information meetings in Williams Lake when Mary Pollock, the Minister of Environment, was on a little bit of a roadshow with them just 2 months ago. Just a little side on that is that it was very interesting. There were 2 meetings back to back, one in Likely, one in Williams Lake next night. The one in Likely, an ongoing local residents' demand for getting Imperial Metals to deliver fresh water or clean water to the people had been going on ever since this happened, basically. And Imperial Metals had been pulling back from that responsibility, especially when Christie said the water's good, a few days after. So it was really interesting to see Craig Ritson, a local resident there, presented the case again for forcefully in Likely. And the next night, Imperial Metals even changed the slide and everything. And it seemed like they had been delivering water to the residents during the whole time, but they have changed their policy now finally. This was 6.5 months after this happened. So they are moving on some things at a pretty glacial pace, or actually glaciers are going faster than in terms of local organizing, there has been a group of landowners, impacted businesses. There's a lot of fish guiding and tours and cabins and campgrounds and all that around Quesnel Lake. It's a very, very popular lake that way. And they were massively impacted. Many of their massive cancellations, all kinds of things. So there was an initiative to pull some of those people together by a group and to pursue a class action suit. But I was just mentioning yesterday that I heard that a week and a half ago, the lawyer that they had on board abandoned ship and the word was bought off. And they're back to square one in terms of coming up with the legal representation to move that forward. These meetings in Likely, in the hall, many of the people that, and it's been a very major split in the area, like a lot of this. Steelworkers Union is very pushing for the mine to open, no problem. Christie says everything's okay. And a lot of the locals, there's been money dished out to the local Chamber of Commerce, very controversial situation because of what it was going to be used for, which was just helping with the gloss over of the whole situation. But the meetings and likely are, in my estimation, many of those people in support of the whole mine and reopening it aren't in the room. It's definitely people who have long-standing, ongoing concerns that are usually there. I'm not sure what's going to happen on this meeting coming up on Wednesday.
You got 10 minutes.
Yeah, okay. But this is a big point. This is their whole strategy, I think, right from the beginning was to reopen the mine as soon as possible, using Springer Pit as their tailings storage facility in order to finish off the last of their underground operations, which is the good seam of gold that they're in.
I just want to say that Springer Pit, which was a deep pit that was one of the last pits that they did, was scheduled. Springer Pit was a place where they were going to store the supernatant water, 10, 12, 13 million cubic meters. Before when the time of reclamation starts, when they're putting everything to bed. But the problem with the Springer Pit is that leaks. And even if they put tailings in there or the supernatant water, the groundwater contaminates and will flow out of Springer Pit. So Springer Pit's not a good place to store your tailings.
No mine, like Glenn Ferris speaks of this, that no mine tailing storage facilities actually contain the liquids. Everyone leaks in terms of slow leaks of certain dynamics within the water tables. So, you know, that part of the thing is there. But the other dynamic, the other thing in this that is horrifying me in terms of the last 8 months is finding out how much a sort of mining engineer wet dream it has been for tailings storage facility engineers to be able to use deep lakes as their tailings, especially acid generating waste. This, thankfully, at this particular point in its history, is very minimal in terms of the impacts of acid generating tailings, just because of the actual rock and ore that they've gone through. There is some question, though, and I have heard this from numerous people, that over time, the impacts of acid generation do pick up, just as the acid balances within these tailings shifts over time and is impacted by the dynamics of leaching and all kinds of things. But now we have a deep water lake in BC, the deepest, 6th deepest lake in the world, now is a tailings storage facility that wasn't particularly planned, but has, with federal legislation recently, very much opened up the possibility or the political support for the declassification of lakes for them to be used as tailings storage facilities. Yeah, Joe?
On that, actually on one note on that, I'm pretty sure there's already section 2. I'm trying to remember the exact legislation, but they're actually scheduled to, yeah, where they actually can reclassify lakes as tailings facilities at this point in Canada. So that's one thing. But like one point about like the meetings in Williams Lake and Likely and stuff, I was at one of the meetings in Williams Lake in February, and I found one of the biggest problems is a lot of stuff is being spun and hidden in extremely technical language. Like there's a lot of people who are coming and asking very simple questions about like have you done studies on the way this is impacting terrestrial fauna? Like questions like that. And they're getting responses that are just like big dances around the question without actually answering it. And so some of the people here who've made comments about how they're about transparency and clarity for people, I think that's really needed at some of these events. So if people have that knowledge and can go, I think that that's massively important to kind of give that information to people.
I agree. I think it's what mining companies generally try to do is hide things from people.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's up to us to find them and expose these things. It's very important, especially for local people who've been there for a long time, who know some of these things. But it's very important because they do always hide things.
Okay. We have 7 minutes left. Dan has something to say, and Bjorn would like to make an announcement as we close. Is that okay?
Yes.
Just a quick question, how much is snowpack this year? Are we expecting higher runoff, lower, normal?
It was a really bizarre, one of the worst, craziest winters we've ever had. We had 3 major dumps, but basically most of the winter I was hearing that we were at 25% of normal snowpack, which is unbelievably low.
So that will help us.
It will, but it means that the tailings are going to be drying out sooner.
Yeah.
Even last fall, there were massive, airborne, wind-borne plumes of this stuff that were coming off. And our experience with Gibraltar Mine, which is a huge mine closer to the Fraser River, between Quesnel and Williams Lake, is horrific in terms of tailings, airborne issues.
You have 30 people in this room.
Yeah.
What do you want them to do?
Will, do you have
Any
ideas or suggestions on that? I've got a few suggestions on that.
Well, the implications from the stuff are that at the other dams like this that are still active, that even though they're a threat, they need to have proper buttressing of their dams.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of issues here that the public needs to get involved in. It all comes through reading and looking at the information, talking to each other. You know, here at this conference, people have been talking about all kinds of issues, like coming up with frameworks, coming up with ways to look at things, right?
To me, I'm really excited about, I was so excited about state extraction. And I've been so massively thankful for the energy that's gone into this. And the suggestion of keeping this as an ongoing dynamic, as well as move it into another whole phase in terms of, you know, networks of people that are working on similar issues and causes and ongoing thing. I would love it if any of you in the room are interested in a you know, internet link, email link in terms of keeping posted about any of the things that are coming through myself and the other networks that I'm tied in, and Dan and Monty for that matter too.
I'm wondering like about a direct action where we get some shovels, a pickup truck and some buckets, go out there, fill the buckets, bring them down, deliver them to the Imperial Metals headquarters. And then force them to arrest us for having these toxic materials.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, these 5 buckets are a problem. Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah,
You wouldn't want to necessarily dump it out, right? Because then you probably are breaking laws.
Yeah.
But, you know,
this has a huge impact in the Caribou, because Caribou is there's a mining area, lots of placer, all kinds of different situations, and many of the small-scale placer miners, you go up with your gold pan and you know slough over a little directly. You don't do that into a settling a little tub or anything. You can get charged, for the few cups of deleterious substances that you sloosh into creeks and rivers up there. So when the mining community, lots of the smaller scale mining communities saw this, they were like, what? What's going on? I think that's a fantastic suggestion. We thought of that with regards to the Hat Creek dump too, bring a little bit of Cache Creek garbage down to Vancouver and say, you guys got to recycle it like we are doing. Anyway, that's a great idea. There is a support group, and certainly the Southern and Northern Secwepemc Nation are probably the most active in terms of their efforts. The northern bands of their nation have signed a protocol with Imperial Metals, and quite a number of their people are working on some of the remedial projects and things that are going on within the mine site now. Jacinda Mack has been very, very active as the representatives from Hatsul Nation, and they're definitely very key resource in all of this. Some of the First Nations in the Quesnel area just haven't had the capacity to get involved. But they are very willing and wanting to, and so those are some of the meetings and things that I'm doing because they're very involved. The Quesnel community has done literally nothing. I mean, council and whatnot. And so, yes.
I just wanted to alert everybody to the fact that in Victoria, the Royal BC Museum is going to have a historical review of the BC Gold Rush.
Awesome!
Starting in May.
Great campaign.
Through October. And our Mining Justice Action Committee has met with various people in the museum trying to get an idea whether they're actually going to be talking about the ongoing gold rush and how they're going to pitch this, because we really don't want British Columbia painted as another destination for more gold mining. They're pairing it with a Chinese exhibition and a Columbia gold exhibition. We feel it's going to be horrible, but we can't actually get the evidence until it opens. But I think this might be a way of focusing attention. We were able to get from them that they will have a photograph of the Mount Polley spill. We know that the captions on all the things only have 25 words because they're pitching it to tourists, and the panels will only have 100 words. we're very interested to know what these words are, but we haven't been able to find out. But I think this, as well as bringing buckets to, we may be wanting buckets at the legislature, which is across the street. So I don't want to say that it's going to not be a good thing. It's just that we haven't been able to find out.
When does it open?
It opens May 13th.
Oh, yeah.
And there is a historian named Marshall who is actually very well-versed in the impacts, historical impacts on First Nations, i.e. genocide. He's involved with it, but we don't know how much of what he's saying is going to get up on the walls.
We're out of time.
We're out of
To
time.
deliver a few buckets for the opening, maybe they'd like to have.
Do we have another question here?
So we should be fighting new mines too, right? Is this staying in line?
Yeah, that's another whole part of this that I never brought up, is that this has great impacts for Red Chris and the providing support for the Caravan defenders that are trying to keep that mine from opening up because it's based on very, very similar, pretty much parallel. Cat Face Mountain and the other mining project that Imperial Metals has planned for, you know, Clackamas Sound, the Ruddock Creek, the Southern Subtropical Territory, same dynamic, or not same dynamic, but very, very important to provide support and network for all.
And also the KMS mine.
Yes.
People know about that?
We have an announcement from Bjorn over here, and I will collect anybody's email who wants to be, I'll be sitting here collecting emails for anybody who wants to be on the list here. Okay?
The opening in Victoria sounds like it's going to be perfect for the Wild Salmon Caravan and whatnot. So please pick up these. This is, we're hoping to make this an annual event, but also a major one this time around because 2015 people, we got to do this year at a provincial level, a national level, and all of our communities need to get online.
I've been doing a chant when I see anything like that. It's leave it in the ground. Leave it in the ground. I've been chalking on people's walls and places, because chalk's not illegal, because it's not permanent, so you can't get charged. So leave it in the ground.
You have the announcement?
Yeah, just quickly, there's a Museum of Now around the corner to the left and to the left again, room 2510. It'll be on all day if you get a chance in between different sessions. It's basically we have 15 different artifacts of the present. Imagining that we're 100 years into the future, looking back on now, and in horror at some of these artifacts of the present. Things that have been touched on in this presentation, like the complicity of our governments with industry, things like that. Pictures with descriptions of it, and kind of playfully with thinking about steps that we might take towards moving away from those.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for coming, everybody. We got some sign-up sheets down here, just emails and phone numbers and